Here we go. Live on the porch. You got it? Is it coming through?
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
There it is.
We'll get it there. It's me check the volume on this. We're hooked up to the Ethernet, so we should be going strong. And the volume.
We got it. Can you hear me?
Yep.
There we go. Then.
So we are live on the porch on Tuesday, the Tuesday before Halloween.
Yeah, Halloween's tomorrow. Be careful if you're out there. Rick and I were just talking a minute ago about our grandkids and how dangerous the neighborhoods are. You know, that we at times are very concerned about driving through the neighborhoods because kids just jump out in front of you. And especially during Halloween, it's like they have no awareness of a multi-ton car coming at them. Even if you're going slow, it's dangerous. So keep your wits about you. And that's another thing. You know, a lot of people, Halloween and they're adults, they drink. So there's a great combination too. Drinking adults and little kids high on candy. Ooh-wee, Betty. That's a scary situation and important on the porch for us to wave the flag and say, be cautious.
Just be very careful.
Yeah, very, very careful. Very careful. Good point.
I'm just quickly getting this shared out there, and I'm done there. Before we get started on today's discussion, I put out there, we were talking a little bit about there is, the state of wisdom in our culture today. What's happened to the concept of the elder in society, and do we even recognize the power of being an elder in society, or does our culture recognize it? But last week we mentioned that you were getting ready to tape Peggy Denny again, and what we could share is in the Greenville market, you'll be able to see Roger on November 1st, and the same show again on November 19th, 1 p.m., channel 16 in the
WGGS.
Upstate
is the call numbers of the
South Carolina. But don't forget, those are stations from Oklahoma and other parts of the country. I don't know about it internationally, but I do know that she's shown out in Tulsa, and I'm sure she's on other stations throughout the U.S. So you would just have to check your local listings as to when the Peggy Denny show is for November 1st and 19th if you're not in the upstate South Carolina.
And it's very similar to the porch. Peggy and I are old friends, and as before we were doing this show, Rick, she was in grieving. The cat that she had for like 17 years had passed away, and she said both her and her husband cried about it. There it is. I remember when I had a dog, and for 15 years, and my wife swears to this day that he should have died a year before, but I willed him on for another year, and I willed him until I was convicted that keeping him alive was hurting him more than letting him go, and so we had him put to sleep, and it was very difficult. It was very difficult, but it was the humane thing to do.
And any pet owner recognizes that, but more specifically, if you're a dog owner, dog lover, you almost feel guilty sometimes where if you lose your dog, you hurt more than sometimes when you lose.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times,
in your life,
it's tied up into your children.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember when our children were little bitty big kids, and they had this dog. And so they'd already grown up, gone to college, got married, and we still had the dog.
Yeah.
They didn't take the dog, we kept the dog. And eventually we were left with the dog passing on. And I could see that in Peggy, you just tie a lot of history to your animal. And to many people, the loss of an animal is equal to the loss of a human being in their lives. So the grief is real, it is deep, it is concerning, and certainly on the porch we want to tell people, don't kind of blow over that. talk about it, work through it, grieve through it properly, and make it a part of the life flow. And you're going to do better psychologically if you do that.
Yeah, most definitely. And in fact, one of the vets that we used to take our dogs to, he actually contacted me a couple of times when he would have patients, the owners of the dogs that he had to put to sleep or whatever, and he recognized that it was going to be a grieving process, and so we were able to process that grief in a healthy way for the owners of those pets, and it is a real pain. It's a true pain. I mean,
yeah, you can imagine. I can think about in my neighborhood. I know this one woman who has this dog that she walks around every day. Every day she's walking that dog. And, part of my mind, I'm thinking, man, what's going to happen when that dog's not around anymore? Because that's just part of her life. That's part of her routine. She's integrated how she operates with that dog. And I think we do not see the depth of the connection, the depth of the emotional connection that we can have with animals. And when they're gone, there is a true void there that needs to be recognized, honored, and worked through.
And a little bit of a segue then, some of you may have seen Roger on Fox News last week.
Yeah, as well.
Talking about
the lottery. Yeah,
how to be a billionaire.
Well, because the billionaire winner was just down the street. Could you believe that? Out of all the United States, not only South Carolina, but Simpsonville, South Carolina, which is just down the road. And some little, convenience store had sold the winning ticket. So I don't know who it was to. And so Fox was asking me, what do they need to do next? And I said, the one thing I've known in my life is there's a big difference between making money and keeping money, or having money and keeping money. And that the people who are wealthy in this world are very focused on keeping it. The old phrase, he still has the first dime he ever made. That person usually has a lot of wealth. But it's not like we don't have money coming in and money running through our hands, but that's what it does. It runs through our hands. We're not focused on that. So that was kind of what we discussed on the Fox News show, was the importance of keeping money, and how does a person keep money, and how do they protect the money they have so that 10 years from now they still have the money. And we also talked about that they had a show I saw on TV just the other day of people who had won the lottery who had lost it all.
Yeah.
Who didn't have any left. And the one person out of all of it that had money left were a couple that had already had a plan before they had won. And if we win, we're going to use it like this. And their plan was, we're going to buy a horse farm. And that's what they did. They took their money and they put it in the horse farm. And so the horse farm now is their life, and it makes money. And they were happy, and they were doing the horse farm, and they were going along. And then you saw other people who had won, who had these great big houses and these fast cars, and they were broke. They had lost it all. And one of the things they said was they had relatives and friends coming out of the woodwork. That the minute that people found out they had money, they had their hand out.
Yeah, most definitely. And I would say South Carolina is one of 5 states that will allow the winner to be anonymous if they want to stay anonymous.
Genius.
Which actually,
Genius.
Kudos to South Carolina.
Yes.
We do a lot of things in this state, a lot of good things.
Not very good.
There's a lot of things we don't do very good.
Yeah.
That one was a good law, and because I do think that's true, and that's again another good segue into the concept of wisdom and what you said about this one couple that had it and were wise enough to say, if we ever won the lottery, we have a plan. And of course, one of the old sages or things you hear is, you don't make any, if you do ever come into a lot of money, you don't make any decisions with it for 6 months to a year. And then you go out and you get counsel from wise people.
Right. Yeah, you get people. That's it. That you talk to people who are stingy about using your money. And they do everything to hold on. because we just do not grow up with a mindset of keeping. If you've never had money and you've never been from money, keeping money is not part of your emotional family structure. And so if you get too much, well, you don't know what to do. You're overwhelmed. And you have an incredible amount of guilt that I got it and you did. And people are more than willing to feed and use that guilt to their own benefit. And people will use your money and take your money. Wow. Well, at a level you can't even believe.
Exactly. And that's the whole key. And again, yeah, lottery's one thing, but how many stories have we read about either sports stars, and we're talking about more specifically young men who are going into the NFL or Major League Baseball. They're coming right out of college, and next thing you know, they're making $5-6 million a year,
and contract,
and no one gives them resources on what to do, and then the next thing you hear that something happens, they have an injury, and instead of taking that first year's salary, which should be able to take you through the rest of life,
right?
They've spent it all. They have an injury, and next thing you know, read these stories about they're on the streets, broke or begging.
Right. That's why I've seen in the NFL where they provide financial counseling now. To every year they're helping help manage money to these people, because that kind of story became the most relevant story in professional sports. People would make it, and I think all of us have heard about MC Hammer, the musical guy who made the money, very successful, gave it, built a house, gave all the money to his friend, woke up one day and was broke. And so all of a sudden he was having to pick it back up and keep it back up for years and years to come. So it's about, and again, that's a great segue to what we're talking about, which is wisdom. And my great wisdom story is the young bull and the old bull sitting on the ledge, and they're looking at a herd of cattle. And the young bull goes, "Let's run down there and kiss us a cow." And the old bull said, "Why don't we walk down and kiss them all?" There's the difference. Yep. And I always chuckle at that and laugh at that story. But that is it's about perspective. I think there's what wisdom brings to the party, Rick. I think it brings a level of perspective that only growing old can you get. You just can't get that unless unless you absorb it from people around you. But then what it dances with now is relevancy. Yeah, I hear that, but that's not relevant. You don't understand. You don't fit in. You're nothing's worse than to go into old school. That's old school. So I find a lot of times people our age talking about landlines and phones and how they operated and how we communicated, and the old. I was looking the other day on a TV and saw old cars, and the one thing they said was, "This is all American steel." That's the way they pitched this car, and I said, "Wow, you just saw gas pouring out the car." Like, oh man, because that's one of the things I asked is, what does it get about 9 miles to a gallon of gas? And again, that's another piece. Can you remember when gas was a quarter? A gallon of gas was a quarter.
I remember. Well, we talked about that. I remember the gas wars in Oklahoma when it got down to 15 cents.
15 cents. So if your car got 9 miles to a gallon, big deal.
Big deal, yeah.
As long as it was solid.
You were so
and the back seat of your car was bigger than your sofa.
Yeah.
What's the day? Oh, do you remember where they had a cord that you held on to in the back seat?
Oh
of the car?
yeah.
Yeah, I was looking again, watching these cars and looking at them. I said, I called my wife over and I said, "Look at this car. There are no seat belts in this car whatsoever." And you had to turn the crank to get the windows up and down. And I said, that's what we grew up with. But it's not what we drive today.
Well, I forgot if we spoke about it here, but I remember for a while I had that 1974 MGB, Now the MGB in '74 did have a lap buckle, but they didn't have the shoulder strap, you know. And I remember driving, I guess it was on Pelham Road, somewhere around here, and a young deputy sheriff pulls up next to me, and you could tell he was doing that, telling me to put my seatbelt on,
Right.
and I'm going, no seatbelts. You know,
Really?
but he would have been 24, 25, and probably never had the concept of
just the belt.
And
for long, and you know, it was amazing how that just came into being. Like there was a time when there was no seatbelts. You didn't think about that. Oh, another thing I thought about was car hoods, emblems.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when you couldn't get a car that didn't have an emblem on it?
Mm-hmm.
But now no car has an emblem on it. You know, or they may have a little patch on there, but there's no, you know, bird or flying anything or choo-choo train or anything on the front of your car. But that's the way it was. So that when we're talking about wisdom, we're talking about going through things that are not available anymore, and people have, you know, trying to relate that to people who have no concept of it. It's like, well, I don't even remember that being.
Well, you know, what got me thinking about this is I was watching a TED Talk by a guy named Chip Conley, who came out of the hotel business, and he tells a story about he was hired by Airbnb, and he was 50-some at the time, and everybody he was working with over there were millennials. And of course, in our culture, we try to make either fun or talk about such a discrepancy between the millennials and the baby boomers. And he admitted, he got in there and he was kind of out of place. And here's this 50-year-old around all these 20-year-old kids, and they were, you know, having different ways of work ethics, you know. How do you put it? He said, you know, they were happy if you gave them free food and a beanbag chair, you know, and
they were living large.
And basically let them work when they wanted to work, and yet he started thinking about it, and you know, and in a way I'm kind of blessed because this is somewhat of the life I'm living right now. Is in my class I work with a lot of millennials, but he was teaching about the idea of being reciprocal in it. You know, is the concept of the modern elder dead, or can we rejuvenate it? Does corporate America need modern elders? But what can we learn from the millennials? And he said, you know, yeah, he was able to teach them a lot of things and mentor them, and he found that they were coming to him once they got to know who he was and he was genuine. They were coming to him about life issues and mentoring them. But he said, yeah, I learned a lot from them, and of course it was more technology-wise, but things that he wanted, you know, didn't even know was out there. And that's how I am. I'll hear my students sometimes speak about something. I say, well, what's that? And they'll explain it to me. And I go, well, that's pretty neat, you know. And hopefully we, at our age, can be modern elders to that generation, but also look at it, you know, what can we also learn from them, and where's the reciprocal side. But the sad thing, and where I'm going with this now, is I've had several, and they've all been males, but I've had several men that I've counseled with who will be turning 64, 65. They've been with their corporations or businesses for years, and next thing you know, they're told their position's no longer.
Yeah, I have a friend who worked for an energy company and, you know, loved the job, loved doing it, was willing to do it for as long as he lived. And they walked in and with a box and said, time to go.
Yeah.
We're happy with your performance. We're happy with what you're doing. No problem. Your time is up. It's like he didn't even realize he was on the clock. Said, but the company has a clock. And at this time to go. And that's another thing that's hard when you talk about working older people is insurance and all that is so prohibitive to keep them on. So we've set up a system that culls older people out of it and marginalizes them, you know, and that's a hard thing, Rick. When you go to, oh, you're the best, wow, you're the best that ever happened, and then the next day there's crickets, you know, and that and nobody knows you. That number, you know, the day before you're the best. Well, we couldn't do it. There you go. We're lucky we got you. And the next day is bye, and hope you have a good life. And I, you know, one of the thoughts I have in that is that when you're in the work world, it's like driving on the highway. You learn how to keep your lane, how to stay in the lane, how to change lanes, and how to drive properly. There's a learning curve on how to drive properly. You just don't get out on the road. You've got to learn how to, work the car as it relates to the highway and the lanes that are there. But retirement is like them giving you a car. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and put you out on the field and say, drive in the field. And you're like, what? I mean, where do I go? Am I supposed to go forward? Am I supposed to go? So the number one word that I think is counter to wisdom is lostness. When that's a hard place to be. And I think that's why we're seeing more and more people, not only in the young people, but in the older people, go into entrepreneurships. I don't need a company. I'm going to do my worth by me. I'm gonna work and get paid for what I'm worth, not my age. And I see more and more people when, growing up, that was a thought. Now I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And so I see the importance of it.
And actually, that's, I guess, can be a pro or con. I mean, the pro side, obviously, it does create an opportunity for entrepreneurship. And I don't know who we will be checking in on this either right now or throughout the week. I would love to get feedback if anybody's working in an organization that you do see where they do honor age and wisdom, and they do have some type of program where you have the modern elder working with the younger generation and trying to figure out how to be the best for the organization and go from there. The idea of, you look at, again, even today, the cultures that still are practicing the Eastern religion, ancestor veneration, but also recognizing the value of wisdom is still very prominent, and you respect that, but it's almost like we've lost the respect for the elder or wisdom in our culture. Like, say, if you get to a certain age, you're no longer relevant.
Well, and I think what we forget in wisdom is selling benefit. See, who wants wisdom if there's no benefit from it? And there's where I think, where you were talking about the Airbnb guy, I think he was able to bring something that brought benefit. So his wisdom, his information benefited people around him, and their information benefited him. So it was a win-win. But a lot of times, people don't really have anything to get or give. So there's no possessing, there's no back and forthism, because they're not able to focus on, here's the benefit. That I can remember, like back in the old days, grocery stores were little bitty things, and everybody knew each other. So you went in, and my sister and I talk about this all the time, the whole idea of charging. Charge it to my dad. That wasn't a credit card. They put that on a piece of paper.
Right, yeah.
And then at the end of the week, my dad would stop by and say, what are my charges?
Yep.
And they'd tell him, and he'd pay it, and that was good. But it was about a relationship, a personal relationship, and how powerful and how important that was. And so the one thing you didn't want to mess with was trust. You did not want to break. Reputation was powerful, was very powerful. But when I can get in the car today and move to the other part of the country and start working, I could have been an axe murderer where I came from.
Yeah.
I could have, done all kinds of despicable things, but all I've got to do is move, and I can make up my own history. And so unless people are able to say, this is who I am, this is where I'm from, that's what it's about, here's what I benefited from. And we do that, Rick. You and I talk about when you were in Tulsa and going to school, what benefit was coming from that. When I was in Illinois and went to school, what came out of that, and gleaning the benefits from it. And looking, boy, glad, rather than, oh, I remember the day, wasn't it great, and when it really, it was okay, but I don't know how great it was. But we really have, I feel, a need to tell our audience to focus. If you've got stuff out there, you sell the benefit. And are people looking for wisdom when it's bracketed by benefit? Yeah. I mean, I find them greedy for it. They want it bad. If they could say, knowing this helps me.
Yeah.
Knowing this makes my marriage better. Knowing this helps me raise kids. Yeah. I remember when we were growing up, having the family in your life was a burden. It's like, oh gosh, my mom, my grandma, they want to be in my life. It seemed so like they meddled a lot, but there wasn't much benefit. And now, well, I hear people, well, I'm glad I live close to family. They help me out. They help me out in my house. They help me out with my children. Yeah. See, there's the benefit. Now, here's the benefit. So now I want to be close. I have no desire to move far away. Because if I move far away, I've got to do everything on my own. And so I'm working 10 times harder just to get through the day. And I can remember growing up thinking, so I never live around family. And as I've gotten older, I thought, well, I wish I lived around family, that I had that connection.
Yeah, that's so true. And I hope people that are listening will hear that, especially now we are talking about those that are 20, 30, 40s, is don't give up that gift. If you have grandparents alive today and parents alive today and aunts and uncles, learn from them, hear their stories. That's one of my biggest regrets in life. I was kind of like what you were talking about. I don't know what it was about our generation, but yeah, get away from family.
Yeah.
And we're independent. And there's so many things now I wish I could have asked my parents and my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, and hear their stories that I don't have. And I got some people that are working just that and recording the stories of their parents. And if you have those people in your, and they don't have to be local. We live in a society today where you can contact, again, the idea, going back to early 70s, if someone said, you'll live at a time when you could basically contact anybody in the world for free and even see their face and talk to them, you'd say, well, that's a good science fiction story.
Yeah. That's Buck Rogers there, man. That's
the old Dick Tracy.
Oh, yeah.
Which we have now.
Yes, yeah. And that's it. And I was thinking in that too, Rick, that I didn't even feel a loss in that until I'd lost the people.
That's what I'm saying.
I didn't ever think about, they were right there and I could have asked them, I could have had a conversation, and I never did. It just never crossed my mind. I was out there getting it done, doing, having fun, going, and being in the middle of it. And in my mind, I didn't see any benefit of that. But when they're gone, it's like, oh my God, wait a minute, come back. I need to talk to you about some stuff. There's no talking to them there. There's no communicating with them. And that's a scary place.
And on the other side, you that are parents, and your kids want to hear these stories. So don't think just because they're not asking you that you cannot tell stories to your children about how kids actually love to hear stories about their parents when they were their age or younger, or how they grew up. And so we also have to be responsible that we're telling our stories if we're not being asked.
Well, I want to say in the middle of this, I grew up in Oklahoma, and I married a woman in South Carolina. And wow, what a great move, because she has all this history, all these stories, all this family I didn't know anything about. I didn't grow up with these people. Mm-hmm. I didn't grow up in this area. And so I find myself constantly gleaning, learning. And I also noticed how much she talks to the grandchildren, not necessarily the children, they don't have time, but the grandchildren. She will tell them about her life and her parents' lives and her grandparents' lives and Greenville back in the day. and go over that. And I think I could see her making a connection
Mm-hmm.
with that, and them not seeing it as wisdom, but as a connection, being connected to something. I just didn't come from nowhere, and I'm not part of nobody. It's like, no, my people were here. My people lived here. My people grew up here. And how I can see it empowering our grandchildren as they listen to that. Again, like I said before, benefit.
Mm-hmm.
That's why wisdom, I think, is going by the wayside, is because people are throwing it out there as, well, this really isn't worth anything, but I thought I'd mention it. And so people go, I heard you the first time.
Yeah.
No benefit. And you're just throwing it out here. So, if you don't put any worth on something, it's hard for other people to then put worth on it. But I think when people say, here's some lessons here, and I know that I've been part of different things in which, in counseling, where a well-known person sit down and you went to listen to them, and it was a casual environment. No, it's like, we're going to sit down here and I'm going to talk about stuff. And what I've come to do is talk about this stuff. If you want to hear it, doors open, you want to leave, knock it out. You don't want to hear this, don't show up. But this is what I'm going to go into. Again, I have value. I put value on this, and I want you to have value in it. But I do not want to take away your choice.
Yeah. And again, now if we go back into asking questions, are you working for an organization that values the modern elder, or are you working in organizations where you've been one of those who at 64, 65 have been told, thanks, but we can do without you nowadays? And Conley, one of the stories I liked about him, when he was younger, I guess getting into the corporate world, he was working for a group, and they brought in, I can't think of his name, but he used to be the CEO of Procter & Gamble.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he had already been through corporate America, had retired, and was now doing consulting. And they brought him in after 30 minutes. He heard what was going on, and he started already reflecting ideas. And the people in the room were amazed. They said, wait a minute, how can you do that? We've been working on these problems for a year, 2 years, and we're finally coming up with what you just got through saying.
Yeah, well, the solution. And you're saying with the solution, and we've been looking for the solution.
And he said, yes, at Procter & Gamble, been there, done that, and so he had that wisdom that had benefits.
Yeah.
Benefit
that's it. See, that's it. He brought forth information that was of value to them, and I think that's probably what we want to say on the program. If you're looking to come across with wisdom, think, how am I presenting this with value? How am I helping people with value? How am I valuing it? If I speak about it with value, I believe that other generations are going to be more interested in it. But when it's just, off the cuff, they are so pressured, so rushed, that they don't have time for that. There's no time I can't sit around and listen to you pontificate about worthless crud. And what's really sad is when that's what you thought and they're gone, and then you're like, wow, that wasn't worth it. I really needed that information. But they just did not focus on the presentation of it. So I think the continuation of wisdom is so wrapped up in the presentation of the material.
Yeah. What was that old story that it was either about Ford or Edison or something like that? And there was maybe it was Ford, and there was a piece of machinery that the factory was having trouble with, and they said, well, we could ask Mr. Ford to come fix it, but he'll charge us $50, something like that. He said, oh, we're not going to pay $50 to fix this, and they could not get it working and everything. And finally, they said, we'll call him over, and he comes in, looks around, and he taps on the piece of equipment. It starts working again. And he says, it'll be $1,000. And they said, $1,000? I thought it's $50 for my time and $950 to know where to tap.
Exactly, man. There it is. Knowing where to tap. And that's powerful, right? And that only goes to that joke about the fixing machinery. That's in marriage. That's at work. That's with so many things that people have already been there, done that, already made the mistake. They're not looking for you to make it so they go, ha, 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 I got you too. It's not a gotcha thing. It's that I've got the information. You don't seem to have any value of it. I don't seem to have any value of it. And so it just passes on. And that's the sad thing.
Yeah.
And I think we did have, and like you said, back in the day, not in our lifetime, but I think back in Europe and whatever, we're seeing where people are connected, that they said, well, these are what people did years ago. And we are now gleaning the wisdom from it because they see the benefit. They say, oh, this is going to help us. This is going to make our life better. And again, that is a hard thing to sell or to pitch when people are under stress and under pressure.
Yeah.
There's the dance we're doing in. Yeah, people all the time I hear, we don't have time for that. We don't have the time to get into that. And I think of the old phrase, pay me now or pay me later. You know, you pay me now, it's only going to be this much. You pay me later, it's going to be this much. You decide, because you're going to have to pay me. It's coming. Now, I want to give it to you when it's not much. But here's the other side. You're going, I think a lot of times, ingesting other people's wisdom means you have to move your pride aside to be able to bring it in. And now, whoa, buddy, that's a tough one. Because again, to achieve, you gotta be proud, you gotta be out there, you gotta be fighting the fight, you know. And if they see any weakness in you, man, that's blood in the water. They're going for you, they're gonna tear you up. You know, we do not suffer weakness well in this society, you know. And we celebrate people who overcome weakness. But it's important to know that there are people out there with a tremendous, tremendous amount of wisdom and that are just sitting, you know, and they're just clocking time waiting to die. And the sad thing is when they die, all this wisdom is going to die with them.
Right, and that's the challenge. I mean, now that I think baby boomers are 47 to maybe early 60s, but now that we are seeing such an influx of the baby boomers that are retiring out of businesses either because of corporate policies or being forced out, what is happening to that pool of knowledge in there? And then the other concept is whatever the reason is, there is some truth that, you know, today's 60 was yesterday's 40 or whatever, you know. But Conley was saying that, yeah, you know, middle age now is being defined between 45 and 75. Now, 75 might be, I think, pushing a little bit.
Yeah, that's really, but that's why once people bring that out and that's how they see it, that's going to be the truth.
But I do know many people that are in their mid 70s that are very active, very productive, very valuable, if given a chance. And we are, you know, for whatever it is, we are living longer, we're living better, we're living healthier, even though we hear all this negative stuff about how we live on the foods we eat and the air we're breathing and climate change and so forth. But I've noticed that. I you know, again, everything's from a perspective. And yeah, when you're 6 years old, but I remember the Dennis the Menace show, and I was shocked when I read this. But you know, good old Mr. Wilson on the Dennis the Menace show was 52 years old when he played that part. But to me, he was always an old man.
Oh yeah, he was in his 80s.
Yeah. He was always good old
52
Mr. Wilson.
years old. Wow.
Yeah. And so again, life is from relativity and perspective, and now good old Mr. Wilson was just a young stud when he was playing that part on Dennis the Menace. But
you know, another thing I'm thinking in this, Rick, is, you know, we both grew up in Oklahoma, the Indian culture.
Mm-hmm.
That culture respected wisdom and encourage wisdom. And the reason was that wise people knew how to stay alive. And if you didn't listen to them, you were going to get involved in a practice that could be the end of your life. So there's an incredible benefit to listening to people. But we've then turned old people not in a survive, though that's going to help us survive and do better. We're stripping all the benefit from growing old. We've stripped the benefit of growing old rather than to look, wow, these people that have gotten old have got something going for them. And I remember Dan and Yogurt saying, here's a place in Russia that eats this kind of yogurt, and everybody in the town is in their 80s. Well, boy, their sales went up because, boy, everybody wanted to eat that yogurt. Was it, but because they saw a benefit. You know, before then, yogurt, who eats yogurt? I don't eat yogurt. But boy, once you put it into that guy, everybody wanted to buy it off the shelves. So it's important to, I think the number one thing we can say about wisdom is it's all around us, but it's not coming to you. You've got to be proactive to seek wisdom.
Or the proactive side is maybe it is coming to you, but you're not being wise enough to perceive it because you know everything. And, and so why listen? And I do think that was the challenge we had at our age, being 18 to early 30s, is we did know everything, and that's why we didn't seek out, I think, relationships with.
Well, again, I think growing up in the free love hippie type it was just seen as weighing us down and slowing us down and a detriment, not a benefit. But I can remember people looking at older people as a deterrent, that you're going to be left behind if you listen to that crowd. And going out and just being free and doing your own way was going to be a better life, was going to be more beneficial. And so that's where I say, that was pervasive in our time. And we just heard that all the time. And we saw that in the movies. We heard that in the music. And that's the way people were taught, that if you live like that. And that has just not been true. What truth is, if you follow that, you're going to be hanging out and you're going to be cold from the hurt and easier disposed of that way. And one of the things, again, wisdom-wise, that I see from later to now, Rick, is roots. The power of roots. The power of being connected. And that is not a passive behavior. You have to go after your roots. You need to claim your roots. You need to connect with you. You need to be proactive with your roots. And if you are, there is a huge benefit to you and a huge benefit to everybody around you. Because psychologically, when you're rooted with something, with someone, with a family, it empowers you. It is a great thing to happen to you.
And watch your pride, because you mentioned that, and I do, and I still cringe when I think about it. But I got my undergraduate degree. My first job out of college was working for a small bank. The most of the people in there did not have college degrees, but they'd worked at that bank for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And I went in there with the attitude, well, I'm a college grad.
I'm money, man.
I don't need to listen to anybody.
Yeah. You could have filled the pickup truck with all the stuff you didn't know.
No, exactly.
Oh, God, that's rough. That's rough.
And I still remember that. And I learned some hard lessons back then. That somebody who actually knew how it works. And so again, wisdom is not attached to education. It's not. Well, Solomon, the great story of Solomon in the Bible when God was pleased with all he had done, and he said, tell me what you want and I'll grant you anything. And he could have asked for the richest man on earth,
Right.
asked to be have the greatest dominion on the earth. But what does he ask for? He asked for wisdom.
Wisdom, right. And the Bible's real clear. If you ask it, I'll give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you have to be, and I've said this over and over in this program today, wisdom for the receiver is a proactive interaction. You have to seek it out. You have to grab it. And if you do, it's there. It's not like it's hiding from you. It's gettable, but it's not going to come and knock on your door and say, "Here I am," and you let it in, and all things good. Even the great minds out there are humping it. They're going at it. Then you hear people, wise people say, I researched, I spent time, I went over and over and over and over this. And eventually, I put in enough time, money, and energy that I gleaned something from it. And there's the relationship. But people, they're just lazy. It's going to come to me. Mm-hmm. And this is all going to work out. And I see people listen to marriage. I said I do.
Yeah.
It's done. Yeah. Put a fork in. I'm like, oh, man, the I do is the beginning. That's not even the foundation. You've got to build the foundation. Then you got to build a house on top of that foundation. It's a process, and that's what wisdom, helps you with. It helps you acknowledge and embrace the process.
So and I like how you said it. It is out there, but you have to be proactive.
Yeah.
And you got to release your pride and acknowledge that you don't know everything, and that there are people. And once again, we're not talking that it's always in the realm of business. If you truly are seeking it, it's out there in every realm of life. It's out there about relationships, about marriages, about business, about kids,
yes.
about education. It's there.
And I think what we saw growing up was the concept of fake it till you make it. And as if people don't know you faking it. And how foolish you appear and how foolish you really are in that. It's acknowledging, and that's a piece, I think, of wisdom is humility. When you have very little wisdom, you are very little humble. Not much humility in unwise, not a lot of humility in an unwise people. But people that I see are wise are incredibly humble. The wisest people I know in whatever area are not trying to sit on the mountain and say, I got it. Mm-hmm. All of them say, I'm still working on it. I'm in the process of, it's a multi-layered experience, and I'm layering as we speak. Wow. That's a powerful, wise moment.
And if you're ever questioning, am I teetering on which side? Am I on the side of wisdom or on the side of foolishness? Proverbs also gives that answer. It says it's the fool who speaks more than they listen. And so give that some thought sometimes when you're out there in your interpersonal relationships. And are you telling everybody else how to do life without listening? There's a lot of power to listening.
Well, but then again, you're talking about culturally, in a culture that says, speak up, be loud, let them know. If you're going to play the game, play big, and be loud and proud. And so you see that the culture is rewarding extroversion. And so even now I'm hearing that a lot of introverted people learn extroverted. They're really not extroverts, but they learn the traits because they see that as a benefit.
But extroversion and introversion, and a lot of people, those of us that are introverts, it is a challenging world sometimes, in as much that people don't understand the introvert. But again, talk about wisdom. We go back again, as we do almost every show, to the Dale Carnegies of the world who teach us, whether you're introvert or extrovert, the basic baseline is still get to know people, hear their stories, learn about them, and you can do that. But you're right. I think, we have to understand that sometimes culture is, a lot of times culture leads us down the wrong road.
And think when we were growing up, we were taught that the person who jumped the highest and yelled the loudest
Mm-hmm.
got the most.
Mm-hmm.
Got the benefit. And so competition was greatly promoted, and collaboration was put on the backside. But wise people look and say, oh, wait, it's collaboration that really makes it. And even the Bible says, a rope that's intertwined is stronger and impossible to break. But we put that aside, I don't know, okay, that was then, this is now. You got to make it on your own. You got to do your own way. You got to be your own person. And you got to speak up and speak loud. And I tell you, that's hard. It's a hard shift. Again, that's part of what we're talking about. Wisdom-wise, is things that we were taught as fact, we have found out are not. And that things that we're told that work don't.
Mm-hmm.
And being humble enough to be in a place of saying, what I learned isn't right, wasn't right, and whether it was or then, today it isn't. And I need to change. Boy, there's a humility in the concept of change. Change for the better. Boy, that'll kick you.
I was going to say that's the first step of wisdom, is when you can learn to be introspective and self-examination. And once you can start learning that you have to truly examine who you are on a daily basis and what your life's about, and that there are areas that are going to be necessary for change. Again, when I was 21, nobody could tell me I needed to change, because I convinced myself I was perfect and I knew everything. But today, I think I can honestly say on a daily basis, I'm having to self-evaluate, and understand my change in thinking, my change in attitude, my change in perspective on the world. And thank goodness, because I'm glad I'm not the person I was when I was 21.
God.
Or I'd be in bad shape.
Well, yeah. And, again, think how much were you encouraged to collaborate, to be a member, or how much were you encouraged to be the quarterback?
Yeah.
To be the first string. And whoever you had to beat, whoever you had to kick, whatever you had to do, getting there was it. And so I hear people, that always fascinates me, younger people talking about, I played a sport and we were connected, and like, what? And we worked together as a team. We had a camaraderie. I'm like, what? And I said, well, I didn't get any of that. I was, put on pads and go out there, and the person who's still standing, is the one who gets the goodies.
Yep.
That's a hard, again, that's hard to learn that, unlearn it, and relearn something. There is, I think, a real element of wisdom, a real element. That unlearning, relearning process, wow, that is incredible when you see people who do that. And there are people out there that are top of their field, and they come in, and we've talked about this before, and they say, the first book I read, and that wasn't a very good book.
Yeah.
And I don't really agree with that anymore. I've come, wow, to hear someone say that in true humbleness, I think is so powerful. It just speaks to me. It's like, wow. how hard was that to come to?
Yeah.
You know, because you're told that, and it comes from that old concept of don't let them see you sweat. I'm not going to let them sweat. I'm never going to admit that I have any flaw.
Yep. Yeah. Well, Roger, we're coming to the end again, and I wanted to be sure we get in there that those that do watch this, watch it to the end. If you ever want to bring the porch, right now we are speaking locally for us, which would be the upstate of South Carolina, possibly a little bit of North Carolina and down towards Columbia. But if you ever want to bring the porch to your organization or nonprofit, just let us know. You can communicate through us via private messaging on our Facebook page. Our phone number's on the Facebook page. Our email address is on the Facebook page. But we'd love to come and bring the porch to you guys one day if you would ever want that for your organization. And with that said, we will be back next Tuesday, 10 a.m.
Back on the porch.
Daylight saving time ends this weekend.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, thank you for reminding me of that. Oh, gosh, man. Yeah, now we're going to a lot of more darkness. That's what makes me think of that. It's just going to be darker more. I do not look forward to that. But I look forward to it because the fact that the sooner it starts, sooner it's going to finish.
Yeah.
We'll be back in. That'll be spring. The sun will be back out. I love that time.
Yeah. So go through, we'll do Halloween. Part of the history of Halloween was that transition between light and dark. And Halloween kind of was festivities to get us into the darkness of the world going for the next 6 months. Oh.
That was a lie. There's a Halloween moment. Well, boom. Anyway.
All right.
Well, the lights just came on.
Yeah, I did not realize my office was haunted.
Really?
But anyway, so the light.
Rick unknowingly is having his own personal Halloween here.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's a good omen or maybe that's a good omen saying that there's always lights.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so with that said, we will see everybody next Tuesday on the porch. Have a good week. And again, we're always open through private messaging, or you can still leave comments if you watch this, which of course will now be offline. I mean that we're not going to live, and we love to hear from you. All right, take care. Go this side, turn it off this time. And then guys, as you watch me turn it off. There we
go. Yeah. So that cloud, we were the only people that could see the cloud thing.
I don't know. Oh. Maybe. I think I might see it. Yeah, if you guys saw the lights come on when we were talking about that 3 light.